Hello everybody, new video here from Bicotic. Canyon have released their new Aeroad, and if I'm honest, there's part of me that really did want the Aeroad to be a completely bonkers aero bike with mad aero profiles, just an absolute aggressive beast. And of course, I only want it to weigh 6.8 kilograms. But back down on planet Earth, the new Aeroad looks like this. And this is the top of the range CFR Dura-Ace Di2, and in many of the reviews that I've seen, the number one thing people say is it looks exactly like the last one. Well, it does look quite a lot like the last one, and it does remind me a little bit of when Cervelo released their new S5, and if you remember, though the bikes look very similar, they were actually quite different. As you can see here, fading between the two, there's quite a big difference at the head tube and at the rear. Likewise with the new Aeroad, yes, it looks very similar, but if we compare it to the outgoing version, which is this one, we can see that it's very similar. There are some quite big differences. So if we zoom in on the front of the bike, around the head tube area, play back to the old one, remarkably similar really. The shape's changed a bit here. Possibly the biggest change we can see from this angle, fading between the two, is this part here of the stem is quite a lot larger on the new version. We scroll down to the forks, they appear to be a bit wider. We've also filled in where the axle goes, see on the old version, and it seems a bit fatter and a bit more sort of smoothed out, doesn't it? If we zoom in on the back of the bike, we can see that the seat post and the seat tube have been narrowed down quite a lot, quite a bit wider on the old one, and I believe the top tube has been changed a bit as well. I think I've read somewhere that that's been strengthened. Seat stays have been dropped down a bit. Still got plenty of tyre clearance. I do often wonder if that is a good thing on an aero bike. We used to try and close that gap as tight as possible to keep it as aero as possible, but now there's quite a big gap there, isn't there? In fact, if we were to compare it to the version from 2018, and if I remember, I will put the links down below to this set of bikes. And later on in the video, I'm going to be comparing the new Aeroad to some of its competition. So I'll put a link to that set of bikes down below in the description. If we load up the 2018 version and compare that with the new one, just fade back and forth, you can see that gap. The 2018, you can see that gap is way bigger now. What's more aero, I wonder? It'd actually be really cool to see these two bikes go head to head in the real world and see which one's the quickest. The Gen 2 rim brake version had geometry that was quite a lot more aggressive than the new one, as you can see there. Just out of interest, the first iteration of the Aeroad was this one, or at least something like this one. From 2010, it was really difficult to actually date this photo, but I think this is the first iteration of the Aeroad. But we have come quite a long way from that. The paint scheme fashions are quite different now as well. Okay, so let's get back to comparing the new version to the outgoing version. Again, on the chainstays, we've filled in the axle hole. Actually makes lining the bikes up really difficult now because I don't know where the center is anymore. And we've lost this little shape that we had before. Down tube looks very similar from this angle, doesn't it? So yeah, in comparison to the old bike, not a huge amount of difference looking at it from this angle. We have changed around here. There's a little rubber cover now, and I believe the seat wedge gets tightened up with a bolt here. If you remember, that got changed early after this iteration was released, because at one point the seat tube was tightened up here, and that went wrong and had to be recalled, and they were getting lots of grit down the seat tube, so they put a rubber seal around it, and then ultimately they changed it and put the seat post clamp in from the top in a more sort of conventional way. So this got phased out. So there's a nice little feature on the Canyon website. If you go and have a look, where you can actually do a 360 of this new Canyon Aeroad. You can actually take a spin round the bike. I think that's pretty cool. I think all manufacturers should do that really. So we can have a look around. And I do like the way all these tube shapes are really quite sharp, aren't they? I think that looks pretty cool. What I question, and I've talked about this quite a lot in previous videos, is when you look at an aero bike, it seems like we spend an awful lot of time making this area very aero, and then this area is just a catastrophically un-aero section of the bike. And there's the dreaded brake hose sitting there in the wind. I think I've made a whole video about that. They go to all this trouble trying to make the bike as aero as possible, and then this lot down here. Maybe one day we'll find a way to clean all that up, and we'll be able to go even faster. Woohoo! So the new bike comes with some pretty funky handlebars. You can actually buy these separately. Now, of course, they're not going to fit on anything but the Aeroad because we've got the really quite interesting setup at the front. Don't fully understand it myself, but you can slam them or have some spacers in, and you don't have to cut the steerer tube, which is an absolute godsend. I love that. If it works and is reliable, I'm totally on board with that. That's brilliant. And now you also have choice of drops. You can buy these replaceable, more aero drops. I'm pretty sure you can't choose which ones you want when you buy the bike, so you have to buy these as an extra part. But it's still pretty cool because you can actually change the width of the handlebars. I think this is a great idea, as long as it's reliable, because there's nothing worse than buying a new bike with ridiculously wide handlebars and then having to change it all. And if you really want to, you can even buy these different shape drops. Pretty cool, really. I also think you can change these without even having to re-cable the bike. I think the cables actually just go into the grooves. Don't quote me on that. There's the view from the top, and you get this cool little thing here where you can attach either your computer mount or a pair of specific tri-bars. I think that's a great idea because I've got carbon bars on my bike, and I'd really like to put some tri-bars on for when I do the local TT, but because they're carbon, I worry about putting tri-bars on them, so I never have. It would be super cool to be able to put a pair on quick and easily and then take them off for normal riding. So yeah, like that idea. This is all pretty cool. So what can you get for your money in the new Aeroad range? Well, pretty much as before, you've got the CFR, Canyon Factory Racing versions. There's two versions of that. You've got the SRAM Red and the Dura Ace Di2. Now, I'm totally a Shimano man. I'm not particularly interested in the SRAM group sets, but that's just personal choice. I still don't understand why SRAM Red is more expensive and actually heavier. So that's a weird choice, but if that's your thing, that's entirely up to you. And then stepping down, we go into the SLX range. We've got the SLX8, and again, that's either Ultegra Di2 or SRAM Force. Again, Force is more expensive than the Ultegra Di2, and anyway, I'd be more interested in the Ultegra anyway, personally. And then the bottom of the range, we've got 105 Di2, or we step down to the SRAM Rival, which actually in this case is a fair bit cheaper. So that's interesting. But again, I have to admit, I don't like the look of Rival. So there we go. So what's the main differences between all these versions? Well, if you compare the Dura Ace to the Ultegra Di2, Ultegra Di2 is 380 grams heavier. It's obviously the SLX version of the frame, so presumably a different carbon layer or a different type of carbon. Anyway, this frame is made of better stuff, apparently, but it is nearly 3.5 grand cheaper, so that is a lot cheaper. But this gets reflected in the wheels, so we're down from the ARC 1100 to the ARC 1400, which is a bit heavier. You do actually get the same bars, the same seat post, and the same forks there. Those are the same across these two bikes. Now, if you compare Ultegra to the 105 Di2 version, compare back and forth, they look remarkably similar, don't they? Except the 105 Di2 is 460 grams heavier, coming in at not terrible weight for an aero bike these days of 7.91 kilograms versus 7.5 kilograms. Again, the 105 version steps down to the ARC 1600s, which is quite a heavy wheel set, if I'm totally honest. When you consider you can get some direct Chinese wheels now, 50 mils, around the 1300 range. So if you did go for the 105, you do have a good upgrade path, I guess, and it is £1,500 cheaper than the Ultegra version. So if you were going to change the wheels anyway, well, maybe. I did ride the 105 Di2 the other day at a track demo day, and it felt as good as anything. So maybe that is all you need if you were going to change the wheels. The other thing I should point out is I got pretty close to pulling the trigger on one of these the other day. It really pulled me in, and I really thought maybe I wanted one, but it was out of stock. So I couldn't buy it. Maybe that's a good thing as well, because I've got enough bikes. But there we go. Maybe if it comes back into stock at some point, I will have another think about it. What I forgot to mention was all these versions of the new Aeroad have a power meter, other than the Rival version, which I've just realised, and that is most likely why it's cheaper than the 105 Di2 version. So just keep an eye out for that. no power meter on the rival version of the Aeroad. Another thing to look out for if you're trying to choose between the old Tegra or the 105 version, they both have a power meter, but the 105 version has the 1134 cassette, the old Tegra the 1130. So if you look down here, when you fade between these two bikes in Bikotic, you'll see that the 105 has an easier easy gear, as you can see there, because it's got more teeth at the back. So what about the competition? Well, I won't go into too much detail because this video's already got ridiculously long. However, I'll put a link down below and I'll call it competitors or something. And if you load that up, there'll be a green star. And if you hit that, you'll see a whole bunch of bikes that I kind of see as the competitors. Let's have a quick look through. So this is obviously the Aeroad. And this is the new Trek Madone SLR 9. This is the SRAM Red version. And if we fade back and forth, I'm not a mega fan of this new Madone. I kind of preferred having the Amonda and the Madone as two separate bikes. It's pretty expensive, $3,000 more than our top-of-the-range Aeroad. Let me know in the comments down below what you think of this new Trek Madone and whether it's a good thing or whether it's for Trek's bottom line. Let me know what you think. Let's compare it to the Scott Foil. Fading back and forth. Scott Foil RC Ultimate here. Nearly £15,000, so that's £5,400 more expensive. SRAM Red, quite a snazzy silver, and it's got these funky Syncross Capital SL Aero 60 wheels on with the spokes that look like they're part of the rim. I have to do a bit of investigation on those. They look mental. Next up, let's have a look at the specialized S-Works Tarmac SL8. This is the limited forward 50 collection, which came out last week. £14,500, so that is £5,000 more expensive. It's a little bit lighter actually. I'm not 100% sure about this paint job. It's pretty funky, but it looks a bit gimmicky, doesn't it? And that is pretty expensive. And I have to admit, I still haven't quite come to terms with the new tarmac and its funny front end. The only thing I would say is if you compare it to the Red Bull version that they released a while back, this is the best looking SL8 I've seen. The designers did a good job there of sort of trying to hide that funny shape at the front. I definitely prefer that version. So what's next? Well, there's the old Trek Madone. Feel free to have a look at that. You got the Team Machine from BMC. This is probably quite a good contender, the Super 6 Evo. We compare back and forth to the Evo. Funky paint scheme there from the EF team. I'm a big fan of this bike. I like it a lot. I'd quite happily ride one of these. Obviously quite a lot more expensive. What do you think? Would you rather have the Cannondale Super 6 Evo Lab 1? There's a whole bunch of other bikes here for you to look at. I actually tried this one the other day at that track demo day I was talking about. It's the Van Rysel RC Pro Replica. Fade back and forth. I like this bike, but when I rode it, there was nothing particularly special about it, I thought. And that's reflected in the price, maybe. It's even cheaper than the Aeroad with the Dura Ace as well. So it's a good deal, I guess, but a slightly unremarkable ride, I thought, when I rode it. In complete contrast to this bike, the Ribble Ultra SLR Hero. And this is actually £300 cheaper than the Aero Dura Ace as well. Fade back and forth. And again, I rode this at this demo day I went to, and it turned out, much to my surprise, to be my favourite bike of the day. It is completely bonkers. The handlebars are insane, and I thoroughly enjoyed riding it. Would I buy it? That is another question entirely. Probably not. It's quite heavy, but I really enjoyed riding it. So it was a bit of a funny one. I have to admit, it was really good fun. And this is quite an interesting bike from Cube, the Lightning Aero. I do quite like the look of it. Sort of a bit weird round here. If they tidied that up, I'd be more into it. But it won 3 stages of the Tour this year with Biniam Guimay from the Intermarché Wanty team. In fact, he won the green jersey. So that's a really good advert for Cube. They must have absolutely loved that. Compare it to the Aeroad. The Aeroad's probably a better looking bike, but actually the Cube is £800 cheaper. And you can actually get it in different colours because that looks a bit weird, doesn't it? Last but not least, let's have a quick look at the S5, shall we? Fade it back and forth. I think of this as a pure aero bike, and it's kind of getting a bit confusing these days, isn't it, between aero all-round and the combination of the two. But I think of this as a pure aero bike. I guess the Aeroad is too. The S5 is a bit of a Marmite. You either love it or hate it. I can appreciate it. Not sure I'd ever aspire to buy it. I'd love to have a go on it. What do you think? Leave a comment down below which you think is the main competition for the Aeroad. Check out the links below in the description. You can compare all these bikes here to the Aeroad, see what you think. The Reacto is probably actually quite a good shout, actually. Have a look at that one. Like I say, comment down in the comments down below, and if you've actually made it through to the end of this video, which is probably remarkably long by now, then fair play to you. And if you've got any ideas of what my next video should be about, let me know down below. Check out bikotic.com, and if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, then please do, because it really helps the channel. And yeah, do comment down below, because your comments inspire me to make new videos. Until next time.